This week, Noriko Bouffard and Marco Genovese from Google are with us to discuss the evolving role of the browser in the enterprise. Then, Chad Cardenas from the Syndicate Group joins us to talk about his firm's alternative approach to investing. Finally, in the enterprise security news, it has been a while since we had a security unicorn, but we've got one. Island raises $100 million at a $1.5 billion valuation. A busy week for funding with 10 more good-sized rounds. Forget juice jacking. You should be more worried about adapters, cables, and dongles. Okta's breach impacts BeyondTrust, 1Password, Cloudflare, maybe more. Threat-informed defense is hard, which is why no one's doing it. A bank attempts to ban texting in 2023. Guess how that's going to go. Some new tools, how to exit Nano, bad visualizations, all that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Cyber threats target digital identities. Do you know who or what is accessing your company's apps, systems, and data? You need to know who's there, who to let in, and who to keep out. And you'll need more than access management to stay secure. You need SailPoint Identity Security. As the leader in identity security, SailPoint can help mature your security resilience while driving efficiencies and compliance for your organization. Start your identity journey with SailPoint's free maturity assessment. Go to securityweekly.com/SailPoint to get your free identity security assessment today. If you work in security or IT and your company has Okta, this message is for you. Imagine a world where only secure devices can access your cloud apps. In this world, phish credentials are useless to attackers, and you can manage every OS, even Linux, from a single dashboard. Best of all, you can get employees to fix their own device security issues without creating more work for IT. The good news is, you don't have to imagine this world. You can just start using Collide. Visit securityweekly.com/Collide to watch a demo today. That's securityweekly.com/KOLIDE. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly, and happy National Pumpkin Day. Not to be confused with pumpkin spice, that gets like 2 or 3 months. This is episode 337, recorded on Thursday, October 26, 2023. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the czar of Zero Trust, the captain of content, Katie Tytler. How you doing, Katie?
I'm well. Happy Pumpkin Day to you.
Do you have any pumpkin plans?
I do have pumpkin plans. I'm having a pumpkin party this weekend. Everything's going to have pumpkin.
So you eating pumpkin, carving pumpkins? What is going on?
There will be no pumpkin carving. No. I'm way too clumsy for that. I'm having a small group of friends over, and everybody's bringing a pumpkin dish, and then somebody will be crowned the pumpkin king or queen. So lots of pumpkin items, from sweet to savory to alcohol.
Wow. And just so everyone knows, I had no idea Katie was having a pumpkin party. That was complete coincidence that I chose that out of the 16 national and international days that are, sitting on this date.
So I have 2 recipes that I've tried already. A pumpkin sausage and kale pot pie, which is outstanding. And then a pumpkin cake with buttercream frosting and chocolate ganache. It is the most requested item in my household, even in like July and February. So,
wow.
So that will be there for sure. And then I just learned how to make a pumpkin martini.
Wow. Yeah, I might have to check on flights in New England this weekend.
Yeah, please come. Bring something and enter for a chance to win a completely insignificant, absurd prize.
That sounds good. I mean, I'll just come for the food. I don't need the prizes. The food is the prize. All right, a quick announcement here. Join us for one of our Identiverse regional events, which I just now found out that we have, coming up on December 1st in New York City and December 5th in Chicago. Seems very cool. Participate alongside local experts and regional peers in information-rich sessions on the latest technologies, best practices, and industry trends. Secure your complimentary registration at securityweekly.com/IDV Regional Events 2023. All right, so this first interview is sponsored by Google Chrome Enterprise, and today's topic is the evolving role of the enterprise browser. I'm very excited to have Noriko Bouffard, Global Lead of Chrome Browser Customer Engineering, with us today. Welcome, Noriko.
Thanks. It's a mouthful, Adrian. Nice to be here.
Yeah, no problem. I'll get there. I'll eventually get there. We also have Marco Genovese, Head of BeyondCorp Enterprise Architecture, with us today. Welcome, Marco.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. Nice to meet everybody, and excited to chat about Zero Trust and secure enterprise browsing today.
Yeah, and this is, I'm very excited to have you guys on here. We've joked I've joked with you guys in private. Well, it's not a joke. Like I've mentioned many times on this podcast, you can go back and hear me talk about saying things like, man, I wish Google would advertise this more. I wish they'd share this more, because I feel like nobody knows about all these enterprise features that are baked into Google Chrome. And I was hearing it from my CISO friends. So one of them we often have on the podcast, Guillaume Ross, is probably the one I first heard from. Him leveraging all these enterprise features in Chrome, and I wasn't aware of them either back then. So I'm so glad that we're having you on to talk about this stuff today.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be on as well. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity. It is sometimes, unfortunately, one of our best kept secrets is all of the integrated capabilities we have within Chrome, not just for security, but for management as well. So we're really glad to be able to come talk to you and to your listeners about it.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's build a foundation here and talk about. I don't think we have to talk too much about the importance of the browser. I don't think there's too many people who are unaware of how much time they spend in a browser and how important that browser is. We've seen browser security come a long way, and I can't remember the last time I heard about drive-by download attacks and things like that. Like, browser security itself has come a long way. But as it's kind of become the main tool, the main way that everybody accesses their business apps, most business apps are now SaaS, right? And even if you're managing your cloud stuff, you're probably also using a web browser, or at least APIs for part of that. So web browsers are really central. And I liked some of your marketing said performance, reliability, and speed are no longer enough. And I do remember the days when those were very much not there yet. And browser performance, reliability, browsers would crash. Some web pages would be really slow. Maybe people didn't know how to build for them. But we certainly are past that point now, I think. And maybe I don't know who wants to talk about it, but when did we start to see the move towards enterprise features here, and what are maybe the high level we can cover what some of those enterprise features are? I'm going to start with you, Noriko, first.
For sure. Well, we just celebrated our 15th birthday for Chrome, I want to say in September. And for a good chunk of that time, we've actually, for more than a decade, have also had enterprise capabilities to manage in Chrome. So that's sort of, again, another potentially untapped opportunity for enterprises to just leverage what's there. But we have seen a steady shift towards having more security-based integrations within Chrome that you could leverage. And I think a big part of it, and I've been in this role for 6 years now, and talking to enterprises throughout that whole time, I've seen a pretty big shift, I'd say after COVID or throughout COVID, where enterprise security controls around the endpoint started to have to change drastically. And so being able to leverage the browser to be able to add extra security visibility has been a thing that we've seen, or I want to say over the last three plus years.
Yeah. And just kind of, chime in on this. It's interesting with our zero trust approach, right? and how we've gone about that. We needed an endpoint, right? We needed some way to posture a device and understand the state of that device. And because of the prevalence of Chrome, even in the enterprise, right, but just around the globe, having an agent, essentially, right, Chrome, and having an agentless approach, allowing for that install base, which is over 3 billion devices at this point, to be able to collect telemetry from an endpoint and use that as part of context-aware access controls, or least privilege access to applications, resources, and data, and becoming a control vector was really, really important. We didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We were able to use something that was already pre-existing in most customer environments around the world. So it was very beneficial. And working with Noriko and her team and the tooling that they put in place, we've been able to kind of be an additive security tool in the enterprise. So like data protection controls, things like malware protection, and the ability for us to integrate through and through has been a huge benefit for our customers.
Yeah, and I think when we chatted before, I remember mentioning it, you almost have to do it there, right? You just have so much more ability to secure things right at the point where it's happening. It's in a world where almost all network and internet traffic is encrypted. Inline tools get very tricky. A lot of companies don't like breaking and reassembling network connections and things like that. So it really makes sense to do it on the endpoint, and that's where most of this is happening anyway. Is right there in the browser. So it totally makes sense to build these features into the browser itself.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's interesting that you bring up that point. And what we've seen is that gaining that visibility is difficult, especially when it comes down to devices maybe that you don't control that are unmanaged, for example. It becomes near impossible, right? You can't go and deploy a certificate to some contractor or partner or some other entity's machine and then expect for them, to kind of go along with your security policies and controls. The browser puts us in a completely different scenario, right, where we can see what's going on, right, between, let's say, an endpoint and the application itself, protect the data without doing like SSL, like termination or inspection. From a privacy perspective, it's an awesome, right, way to do these things. And then as well, it's essentially having the endpoint, right, do and take those kind of actions versus having to backhaul or hairpin and inspect traffic like we used to back in the day with a proxy or a firewall or some other kind of tool. So it really gives the customer a lot more control. It also provides a better overall user experience as well, right? Because not just being denied, instead it can be educational. You can't print this data because it contains customer records or something to that effect.
Yeah. So my next question is kind of around like when did it make sense to add this to go on this journey for Google? I remember a time when Microsoft Windows didn't have a built-in firewall. It didn't have whole disk encryption built in. It didn't have antivirus built in. These were all third-party products you would buy from somebody else. And I guess it's always a challenge for somebody who makes like a popular software application, whether that be an operating system or an app that runs on the operating system, whether or not to partner with third-party vendors to help make that possible, or whether to just do it yourself. So maybe help me understand the journey to decide to build these in yourselves.
Noriko, I don't know if you want to chime in. I'm happy to.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like our journey at Google sort of started with our own breach back in 2009, and I think that's what made us take a different path than what would be more traditional to a lot of other companies with different agents on the endpoint. We decided that, and I'll let Marco go into this more deeper because you were kind of there with Google at the time, right? Being able to take a step back and take a different approach where it's an agentless approach, leveraging the browser to be able to basically assume breach, don't trust the network, don't trust the device, and only give access based on what you know about the posture of that device and that person. So that's really kind of has been our journey. And I think more recently, again, just where work has changed, where a lot of the industry has come up to that point where you said earlier, Adrian, cloud and web usage is just continuing to grow. Browser usage continues to grow. So being able to use the browser as that point of security has really hit that tipping point where we see other enterprises now ready to sort of take the model that we've been putting out there. Marco, did you want to add any more?
And I think we're in a unique place as well, because of, again, the prevalence of the Chrome browser. And we have built a lot of this tooling into the Chrome browser, but we want our customers also to have options. So we have this partner ecosystem as well that allows for us to kind of extend the reach, the visibility, and the control. So, customers might have like a CrowdStrike EDR, and Chrome has the ability to collect telemetry from their risk scoring and such to make determinations based on the state of an endpoint, right? Based on what the EDR client might be telling BeyondCorp as a tool to the Chrome browser, whether or not they should be able to access a resource based on the state of the device and what the EDR is saying. But the kind of same goes for things like feeding this data into our own Chronicle security analytics platform, right? Our findings on an endpoint, the data, how the users are interacting with that data, or maybe feed this into a Splunk because customers aren't necessarily using our security analytics platform. And so building this partner ecosystem has been a huge part of kind of what secure enterprise browsing is bringing to the table. Or maybe using like a third-party, DLP technology as well, maybe like a Symantec or a Trellix or something else to that effect. And so Google, we tend to kind of build more flexible solutions that will allow for us to kind of encompass our partner ecosystem. But then we also build our own, right, DLP engine and our own URL filtering and our own malware, sandboxing, and detonation services that are part of the overall secure enterprise browsing solution. So I think it really comes down to options, right? People want options, customers want options. It's not a one shoe fits all at the end of the day. But it's definitely built, like Noriko said, off of our own learnings over the years, over the past decade plus, in response to things like nation state attacks, and the fact that at this point, it's encryption at 80+% of enterprise applications now are web applications, and all that traffic is coming over HTTPS typically, and so you need to have the control in the browser.
Yeah. So from there, and just to clarify, I think this is Operation Aurora that we're talking about that happened back in 2010.
That's right.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Was it?
And yeah, sorry.
No, I was going to add a little bit to what Marco was saying, and I think a lot of reasons why customers haven't. I think let me stand by. I think the Chrome approach to helping enterprises leverage our capabilities has always been, meet them where they're at, and that started with how we deployed policies at the very beginning. Recognizing that a lot of customers leverage Windows, so being able to manage Chrome very easily using Windows policies, and then onto other platforms as well. So being able to meet them where they're at and being able to do it very simply. A lot of what we've done too, a lot of customers don't realize, is that you don't need a different version of Chrome to be enterprise. So in that regard, I commonly get these questions from customers like, what do I need to buy to be Chrome Enterprise, or what kind of binary do I need? The answer is pretty simple. If you already have Chrome in your environment and you want to put it under management or deem it enterprise, you just need to apply the policies, push them out as you normally have them, or you could leverage our cloud-based policy management, which has really been, we call it Chrome Browser Cloud Management on the side, but essentially it's being able to push cloud policies, which then, during the COVID time was super helpful because you didn't need to have your users signing on to VPN to get policies pushed. And so that was really helpful, especially when there was a critical update that you needed to sort of force a relaunch or force an update of Chrome, because most users don't like to close out Chrome. So those were very handy things that customers could leverage for free straight away. So I often found it to be really great to tell customers, hey, you feel like Chrome, and this is what I've seen a lot commonly, maybe not so much these days, but I've talked to folks from the security side saying Chrome is a shadow IT problem because users just deploy Chrome, download it themselves, and they don't feel like they have a way to manage. But it's quite simple. You can just push a policy to that device, and Chrome will then be managed regardless of how it was installed on the machine. So it's a really easy and quick way, low-hanging fruit, if you will, to enhance your security posture with Chrome on your managed devices.
Well, I've got to point out that there was some amazing work done to make, I think security. You mentioned nobody likes to close out Chrome, but I want to push back on that a little bit because I remember the days where if your browser crashed or if you closed it by mistake or your computer blue screened or rebooted, like you lost a bunch of stuff in your browser. And we've come a really long way to the point now where sometimes my computers will reboot themselves to apply patches or something like that. And I come back to them. And the only reason I know that it's rebooted is maybe, Spotify is auto started or something like that. And I remember not leaving it like that. But otherwise, like my tabs are there, like everything is right where I remember it. Even if I was typing something into a text box, it's still there. So I feel like that's gone a long way to make it much less painless for somebody to reboot, restart a browser. I don't know if the browser has to be restarted for policies to apply, but it's so painless now that I feel like I need to call that out because that makes it a lot easier. The reduction in friction on your end users to have to do a restart.
100%. Yeah. I think there's a lot that we've done around. Oh, sorry.
Go for it, Noriko. No, you're fine.
Yeah, I'll just say in terms of update controls and policies, we've done a lot there to give flexibility to enterprises to make sure that we don't force an update during the middle of a workday, or if you're in a call center situation, you don't want to be forcing a reboot or forcing a relaunch of Chrome halfway through a call. So being able to give controls as to when that's going to happen, also give warnings to the user so they have a chance to choose themselves when it's time to relaunch. These are really helpful aids for admins to work with their end users to get them on the latest version to be more secure and avoid exposure to browser vulnerabilities. Marco, you wanted to add a little bit to that?
Yeah, it's funny because we always talk about, I go Chrome, it's using more memory than it used to, right? Because we're using more applications. And, if you think about rebooting your machine, you'll have maybe 20 tabs open with different applications that are being used, for example. And you'll notice, like, when you reboot, it says, hey, do you want to restore the tabs? Because we're actually taking snapshots, keeping tabs, no pun intended, on where the user is within the browser, and then restoring that. To your point, it's become an operating system for the internet, essentially, right? It's the ability for the user to now interact with these applications. And so it's critical that the user experience is going to be a good user experience, right? And they're not going to be impacted negatively. And things like policy, to your point, we can refresh, and we do continuously refresh and push new policies, even for secure enterprise browsing, right? And controls that will be enacted on the browser for the user, the data that's being downloaded, uploaded, copied, pasted, printed within that browser. These policies, these CBCM policies on the browser itself, are seamlessly updated in the background, right? Silently, independently from the user having to interact or do anything. And so it overall has become a much more powerful tool in the enterprise. And you see that continuing on into the future as we add new features and functionality. The beauty of this is, to Noriko's point earlier, when we release, Chrome 115, 116, 117, and 118, these features continue to be added. And the user doesn't have to do anything. Much like Windows updates, like you were saying, right? It's just going to auto-update in the background, and then the user just takes advantage of the new functionality, which is huge, in my opinion.
So what, if anything, do end users notice if the security team or even the IT ops team decides to, improve the security on the browser using this? Is there any indication immediately to users, or do they just keep doing what they're doing, basically?
I'll take
So
this
you
one.
kind of have the best of both worlds on that front, right? So as an administrator with Chrome Enterprise, you can turn on or turn off features and functionality. You can manage the actual updates themselves of the browser in an enterprise fashion, like you would with like a normal operating system. And when new features and functionality come out, and you may have noticed this, but the users can be notified, right, of a new feature or functionality and say, hey, were you aware that this now is available to you within the browser, and you can take advantage of it, right? So in an enterprise, you have the control and you have the ability to manage all of that centrally and make the user experience even better. And obviously in the consumer product, we also make users aware of new functionality, new security features as they're added to the Chrome browser. But that's a great point to bring up, right? That is critical in the enterprise. Noriko,
I was going to add, so, we really do want to make sure that the end users are aware that they're being managed. And so we do have, a symbol that will come out. If you go to the settings page, it will say you're managed by Corp. So at least that way you know, and you have signals that, okay, this instance, if I'm signed in with my Corp credentials, or if I'm on a managed device and I have policies applied to all instances of Chrome, as a user of Chrome, I'll see that, okay, I am being managed by my environment. But from the admin side of the house, where a lot of them would prefer their end users not have to interact or do something to come under management, we've also made that very simple and seamless in that the user just does not need to do anything in order to be brought into management. Katie, I think, was that part of your question?
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that's incredibly important. You don't want it to be a secret. You want people to know what's there, but at the same time, you don't want to make it cumbersome or onerous on them, because the first thing that happens when you tell a user, "Hey, we're applying the security policies," is they flip out,
or they'll blame every problem on it, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think users like to have transparency, and so it is possible to see what policies are being applied to your device. In fact, I like to educate people. If you just go to your Chrome, open up the Omnibox, open up Chrome and type into the Omnibox Chrome://policy, and you're on a managed device. Unless you've been blocked from going to that site by policy, you'd be able to see what policies are being applied by your administrators. So there is transparency from that side, and it does help with troubleshooting on that as well. But again, from an admin side, they'd prefer to be able to not have to have end users. It becomes a brittle enterprise solution if we require end users to have to do something. On that other point, though, Katie, to some of the capabilities that BeyondCorp Enterprise can do around DLP controls, there are ways to educate the user with, UI to say, hey, like what you're trying to do, you're trying to print something, we're going to warn you, we're going to block you. So there's ways that we can also signal by policy to say, hey, this is something that we prefer you not to do. So it's an intentional interaction with the end user.
Yeah, so I want to dive into what makes what we're talking about when we talk about enterprise features. So we've already, we've been talking about policies, and just on my browser, I went to Chrome ://policies just to see what was there. But yeah, let's Noriko, let's dive into talking about like what specifically some of these features are. What companies can leverage here from the version of Chrome that's already deployed, that they already have available to them, and what makes those features enterprise.
Sure. So yeah, we have had a core set of policies and capabilities within Chrome Enterprise, as I mentioned, built over a decade. And some of the core functionalities that we see customers like to leverage, and we have over 400 different policies as well. If you look at our Chrome Policy Enterprise policy list, it can be a little bit overwhelming, but I think really the gist of a lot of them come into categories around hardening the security postures or the defaults that we have within Chrome. So we have Google Safe Browsing that protects all of our users of Chrome, not only consumer but end users. Enterprise users. So if we're going to, we have real-time views of phishing and malware, malicious sites that we would, show are those. If you've ever hit that a red interstitial, big red page that says, do not continue. We try to put friction in between the user towards the dangerous site. Enterprises leverage that too. They use that to educate their users to say, hey, if you see that, report it, don't click. But there's policies to be able to prevent users from, one, turning it off, because consumer users could basically go and turn that setting off. So could enterprise users if you haven't hardened that policy. So that's just one example. But the other areas that we see customers leveraging our policies are around update controls. So we talked a little bit about that, right? So being able to have customized ways of controlling how Chrome updates. We have customers that love being on the front end of being on the latest and greatest to keep their browsers protected from the latest security vulnerabilities. However, we have a lot of customers that have older applications that they have to test and go through more rigorous checks before they can update to know that they won't be breaking some of those legacy applications. And so we have controls there to allow them to pin to certain versions, taking that choice between, being more safe from your browser's vulnerabilities to being more stable in your business operations. So that's another whole area of capabilities. We have the areas around extension management. So that can be you have the best of both worlds.
Right?
Absolutely,
That's
yeah.
a huge one.
It is a huge one. A lot of customers we've seen it's been Wild West for them. They didn't maybe realize that extensions is an area they should be looking more into. It definitely helps their users have that productivity, the customization that users like to have on their own browser. But there can be some extensions out there that might have powerful controls that you as an enterprise or from a security lens want to make sure that you can manage that. And so there's a lot that we can do with extension policy management to, one, first of all, get visibility to everything that's running in your environment. That has been a difficult thing in the past, but we've made that very easy to enroll your Chrome browsers into our cloud management console and get a ton of reporting around what extensions are in your environment to sort of take a step back, audit what you have, and then be able to then decide what kind of enforcements you have. We have something like extension workflow. So if you want to have an interaction with your users to say, we're going to have a posture of blocking all extensions, but we want to know what extensions you do want to have. We have a workflow to be able to have users from the Chrome Web Store be able to say, hey, I'd like to request this. That way you can go through your own rigorous security analysis to see whether this is something you want to allow or you allow, but with certain restrictions based on permissions. So there's a lot of things you can do around extensions there as well. So I haven't even talked about all of them, but it's really about visibility, control on updates, giving sort of a unified experience around how Chrome is being used in enterprise.
And I think that visibility is pretty huge. It's, especially that, Chrome Enterprise covers all the platforms, right? Even the device type that is Chrome, the Chromebooks, Mac OS, Linux, Windows, and even mobile. You can see, what version everybody's running, and you can see all those extensions. I imagine pretty much every company that looks at the extensions deployed across their enterprise is probably in for at least a few surprises. For sure. And just as a public service announcement for extensions, the extension ecosystem is updating themselves to Manifest v3, which is, the Chrome extension group and engineering group, moving it to, a more privacy, security preserving platform. That being said, Manifest v2 extensions, there are a lot out there, and if enterprises are not prepared for that deprecation, it is coming. We have policies to help protect you. So that's the other area I'd say of policy control that we have, is to be able to help give an escape hatch to enterprises when we are doing things to advance the web around security or feature capabilities that may break legacy technologies. We have policies to kind of help give you a little bit more time to get what you need to get done. A perfect example is when Flash had to be deprecated, having a policy to be able to kind of keep that lifeline going until the very end, at least helped some enterprises get to a better state without completely breaking their business processes. Sorry, Marco, I think you wanted to add something.
No, I think you pretty much, nailed it on that front. I think that having a good foundational approach to securing the browsers and an organization is paramount. And then layering on additional security controls, right? And I think for us, it was one of those kind of defining moments where we realized, hey, we can put a lot of the existing tooling, right, in an enterprise into the browser. Things like, for example, proxy, doing things like URL filtering, right, based on categories and blocking things like gambling sites, for example, or adult websites, or whatever they might be that you might want to remove from the enterprise. Why not do that within the browser? And then extend that to the data layer itself, right? If data that contains social security numbers, credit card information should be leaving the organization, let's take actions to prevent that. Or even interactions that we couldn't necessarily take in traditional proxies, like copy and paste and printing of data based on the contents and the context of the device. Because we know who the user is in the browser, we know what the data is that they're interfacing with, we know the state of the device that the browser is running on. So building powerful enterprise features like data protection controls into the browser just made sense. But in addition to that, because we have the visibility without needing to decrypt, right, everything that's transiting that network to that device, why not do things like malware detection, do static content analysis, run YAR rules against it. Let's detonate potential malware in sandboxes and determine whether or not it's malicious and prevent it from going and poisoning your application stack as a customer or impacting the endpoint itself negatively. And so adding all these enterprise features to the Chrome browser just makes sense in the end of the day, right? It's going to protect, users can protect the applications, the organization. And that's where we're headed with all of this. And that's what we've been introducing over the past few years.
Yeah, so I want to kind of pivot here and just make clear most of the stuff we've been talking about with Noriko is free. Like you have it right now. If you have Chrome, you can use these enterprise features. Does that include the dashboard like that you use to manage these policies and push these policies?
Right. So everything I've spoken to, some of the things that Marco had talked about there go into some of our more advanced paid offerings that we've put out with BeyondCorp Enterprise that leverages Chrome integrations. But the things that I've mentioned are really part of our core capabilities that are free to use and have been free to use for as long as we've had enterprise policies. So there is something that we launched, I want to say back in 2019, which is our ability to manage Chrome devices or Chrome instances at the device level from cloud. So most administrators have been managing Chrome through Windows GPO or plist for Mac and Linux, or pushing policies through MDM for iOS and Android. However, the Chrome Browser Cloud Management is the platform leveraging the Google Admin Console. If people are familiar with how they manage Google Workspace today, we basically leverage that platform to be able to push a token to your instances. And from there, you don't need identity even, but from there you can manage policies or manage the browsers across all of the devices or all the instances of Chrome on that device rather. And so that console or that dashboard that you mentioned is really leveraging our Google Admin Console. And that is free to if you want to get started with managing Chrome, there is a free path to sign up to be able to get access to that and get started. And that token push is not at all, there's no end user interaction, and that's where a lot of admins are just really happy to get started with visibility. So they've been managing policies with GPO for a long time, and they're like, I'm not so sure I'm ready for the change management to go to cloud quite yet. Other admins are just like, oh my God, this is so much easier for me to be able to push a single policy to all my platforms. But some are just like, I really want to get a sense of what's going on in my fleet, and especially around extensions. Let's get started there. So being able to push that token to your entire fleet, then start with reporting, see what's there, is a huge win for a lot of our customers that have deployed it.
So it sounds like for people already using Google Workspace for their organization, they already have access to this stuff. It sounds like.
Absolutely.
And
yes,
it's right.
It's right there. So they should take a look at under Chrome or Chrome devices, depending on what their domain is looking like. But yeah, there's a way right away to get started.
All right, awesome. And yeah, now I want to pivot a little bit more to the advanced side, to the stuff that you can pay for. A few times already here, Marco, you've mentioned zero trust access. So maybe just make sure we have time for things. I definitely want to touch on the BeyondCorp capabilities here.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not happy to talk about that. Sorry for chiming in. I got a little excited earlier.
No,
but yeah,
you don't have to apologize.
On that. Yeah, just to kind of clarify on that front, right? There are certain pieces of it that we include that are inherently part of the platform, and you can kind of back to like workspace, for example. You can wrap what we call context-aware access control policies on workspace applications. That's part of like a Workspace Enterprise Plus subscription. And there's other functionality, like what I was kind of discussing earlier, where we can go even lower level and we can start marrying together like data protection policies with context of a device, and then introduce controls on a user and on a browser. And these are paid features. Things like preventing a copying or pasting of data to, let's say, an application that maybe it doesn't belong in, we can do based on the contents, right, of that data. So we can run machine learning models that will detect on particular information, and then based on maybe like API access keys being uploaded to a cloud service where they don't belong, will actually block and warn the user that they don't belong there and they shouldn't be taking those kind of actions. And these are paid features within BeyondCorp based on the state of the device, for example, maybe it being a personal device versus a corporate-owned device. We can communicate to that endpoint and determine if it's encrypted, if it's patched, if it's up to date, for example, if it's running an EDR endpoint. And then based on the state of that machine and the fact that the user is interfacing with, let's say, financial information, we can allow for it to be downloaded to that device. But if they try to do the same thing with those user credentials as that user on a personal device, while they might be able to access the application, they can't actually download, right, to that personal device, right? So these are features of, again, what we call BeyondCorp Enterprise. And it's basically giving more advanced tooling to the enterprise as they need it. Other things are going to be reporting, right, and advanced analytics that come out of this. So when users do take those actions, or maybe they potentially like upload malware or download malware, reporting on this information and taking actions depending on those flows is all part of more advanced, feature set from BeyondCorp itself. The ability for you to block access to certain applications based on categories, right? This would be another advanced feature set where maybe I'm going to standardize on Google Drive, but I don't want people necessarily uploading data to secure file store com or whatever it might be, and so we can go ahead and again just block outright to those other file sharing sites, or maybe based on the content of that data, right? So again, I don't want my financial records going to some random file storage site, so I'm going to block those categories and allow Google Drive to be used. And so all that functionality is licensable as part of BeyondCorp. And it can be used, to your point earlier, Adrian, across Linux, Mac, Windows, right, Chrome OS. You have an entire landscape of operating systems that can be supported because, again, it's just the Chrome browser that's actually introducing the functionality and the features.
Right. Yeah, and just to clarify, some of the the network access features of that, like how far does that expand? I thought at one point like you could even enable that for fat clients, but maybe that was maybe that was sunsetted. I don't know if anybody was actually ever using that, or if that's just for web-based apps that are behind firewalls.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So we actually can facilitate for this outside of just web-based applications. So our zero trust access controls, so we call access or context-aware access like policies that we can apply, can be applied on things like an RDP session or SSH. It could be something like SCP in a file, and we can actually enact those same policies. And we actually use the Chrome browser to determine the state of the device that's trying to connect to those resources and facilitate for it. We're really trying to get away from just allowing access, though, right? With web applications, we can apply a lot better control into the data itself. Whereas if you're just looking at allowing connectivity to, let's say, a VM that I want to access by an SSH session, while we can validate and verify the state of the device and then allow access based on that in a real true zero trust methodology, it's not necessarily going to be as powerful, right, if I can't control all aspects, right, and all interactions with the data. But to answer your question, yes, we can facilitate really for any TCP communication without the need for a VPN. And so that's definitely an area that my customers have shown interest in.
Awesome. All right, and one more thing I wanted to touch on real quick before we wrapped here is that you also have a lot of integrations with third parties. Like everything we've been talking about so far has been native features that Google provides, that Chrome can provide. But it sounds like you also have a lot of reporting and integration features with third parties as well.
Yeah. So we've actually built quite a few integrations. Obviously, our native Chronicle, right, which is our security, like advanced security analytics platform, which definitely plays in like the SIEM arena, but extends it with advanced tooling, is one thing that we can write directly into a unified data model, and that becomes extremely powerful when you're doing threat hunting, for example. But we also built connectors with, for example, like CrowdStrike, so we can feed all this data into CrowdStrike. Because they want better visibility into the web application traffic and what users are doing, and they can't typically get that without something like this. Same goes with like Palo Alto Networks, which we have native integrations we can feed into. Same goes with Splunk, for example. Or customers might have any other solution, and so you can use PubSub, and you can actually feed this anywhere you want to in the enterprise and get that rich telemetry that you'd want to see. It is very powerful. We've built several different integrations, and even as far as tying in with like third-party MDM providers, like the Jamps of the world, Workspace ONE, for example, and even Microsoft Intune is fully supported. And so we really believe in this kind of open architecture and to work with these partners and other tools that customers have, so that they don't have to necessarily just leverage us, but they can leverage the best of breed within the enterprise, and then use that to secure their environment how they deem necessary and fit. And that's really how we go about things here with that secure enterprise browser that customers are leveraging.
Great. And I think that's about all we have time for today, but I do want to point out that we've got some great links in the show notes today. We've got there's a complimentary Gartner report on the future of enterprise browsers, a link that you can go to learn more about getting started with the core features of Chrome Enterprise, and then another link that you can click to get into the more advanced features, and also a recording from Google Cloud Next. That's a customer spotlight that I had time to watch part of, which was interesting. So go to the show notes, check out those links. And Noriko and Marco, thank you so much for joining me today. This is something I've been wanting to make happen for quite a while.
Thanks so much, Adrian. It was great to meet you, and happy Pumpkin Day, everyone.
All right, and stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to talk early stage startup investments with Chad Cardenas from the Syndicate Group. And we'll be right back.